Welcome, everyone, to our conversations with candidates. Over 2 weeks, we will be bringing you interviews here at the Idaho Statesman with the people running for governor May 15th. Today we have Democrat Peter Dill. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And maybe just start with briefly talk about your campaign. What's your first priority? What are you here to do for the people of Idaho?
Well, we're a grassroots campaign. Our focus is justice, fairness, and reconciliation. I believe that in this fractured environment, we need to begin with doing what we can to work together. We need each other. We need to be able to listen to each other and find creative solutions together to Idaho's problems. We have challenges in education and healthcare and economic development. We need to think carefully about sound environmental policy. And that's going to take all of us working together. So I would begin there.
So it's a very nice, it's a good concept. What do you do to actually bring reconciliation about in the current climate?
Well, for 30 years I've been a business lawyer, and I've dealt with conflict that is pressing for individuals and businesses and communities. And if we can help create a culture of listening, a culture of creative problem solving, and a culture that recognizes that we need each other to get the best solutions, it'll help. We talk in politics about reaching across the aisle, and that's important. But we really need to walk across the aisle and respect each other and respect each other's thinking and realize that together we can come to better solutions than we can just in our own parties.
So as you look at the governor's office, what's an example of how you, in that role, would see yourself enabling that?
Well, it begins with building relationships that are even on both sides. We can't view one party as the good guys and one as the bad guys. We're all here representing the people of Idaho. And the people of Idaho are diverse in thinking and diverse in priorities, so that the governor's office needs to be a place where all people feel represented. In a very simple way that was probably more profound than simple, a number of years ago, a governor would sponsor a pancake breakfast on Saturday mornings and bring all the legislators together. I don't know if that happens anymore ever now, but being able to bring people together in a jovial fashion is one. But in addition to that, being able to respectfully and carefully listen to each other is another. And I think the governor can help to facilitate that. In the legislature now, the Republicans obviously have a wide majority and may not sense the need for the Democratic voice. But wisdom is resident with all people. It's not in think tanks, it's not in bureaucracies, and it's not in moneyed interests. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to move to a bright future, we need each other, and we need to carefully listen to each other. And it's a culture shift that I think can begin in the governor's office, and if it doesn't begin there, it probably won't happen.
So what led you personally to decide to pursue this in this run? Just maybe a little bit about yourself. Why now? Why this election? Why you?
Well, I'm an organic farmer and a business lawyer. Perhaps an odd combination, but it works in our family, and it actually brings some insights from a couple of different worlds. My wife and I have grown children, and we care about their future. We love Idaho. We care about our people and our land. And if we are not thinking carefully about the wonders of Idaho, we'll lose them. So I run now because of my care for people, my care for the land, and my care for the future. And this manifests itself in a variety of ways. But as an organic farmer, I'm keenly interested in sound environmental policy. We need to be taking steps to reduce our dependence upon herbicides and pesticides, toxic chemicals, which are ultimately detrimental to clean air and clean water, and to our way of life. We need to be thinking sustainably about agriculture and local food. We need to think carefully about the pressures that particularly southern Idaho is feeling with the oil and gas industry attempting to move in and do exploration and development, which in my view is very risky And so we need to seriously regulate this industry to avoid problems that will arise if any development occurs near rivers, near aquifers, where people live, and in food-producing farmland. This is a part of thinking about the future. Idaho's growing. People are coming. And I welcome Californians, and I welcome Texans, and I welcome people from Washington. We need to, in welcoming them, however, think carefully about how development will occur in our counties and in this region. And so counties have set long-range plans, and we shouldn't be setting them aside lightly, even with development pressures as they are. So, you know, I think about the future in agriculture, I think about the future in community development, I think about the future in economic development. And we shouldn't be victims, we should be leaders. And I'd like to see us do that well.
The comments about growth there is a great lead in too. I was going to ask a little more. What concrete steps, as governor, would you take? How would you try to guide and support the growth while also helping local officials deal with it? And of course, here in the Treasure Valley, we're seeing it to a different extent than other parts of the state. But everybody's getting touched one way or another, whether it's outflow or inflow, by these dynamics right now.
Well, we have to be careful when we talk about what the governor or the state will do in county relationships. Because I respect, as I believe you do, and most Idahoans do, the role of each level of government throughout the state. And yet there are things that we can do that are supportive, and there are things that we can do that really create problems one for another. And none of us want the problems. We want to be able to work cooperatively and intelligently together. One of the things I think at the state level that can happen is in this area of oil and gas development. The state is charged with regulating this, as are the counties. And I believe that, first of all, I want to recognize the very good work being done in cities and counties across southern Idaho. The city of Eagle has done excellent work with input from many citizens. And in Fruitland, they're doing the same thing. And in our county, our commissioners are, I think, carefully deliberating over wise regulation of this risky industry.
And I suppose we should say for folks which county that is.
I'm from Gem County. It's about 25 miles north and west of here. And my family farms there, as we have for 20 years. Idaho is a lovely state. I've enjoyed Idaho all my life. And I don't want to see the wonders and the beauty of Idaho wasted by interests that have short-term purposes in mind when we have long-term purposes in mind.
It has not been that long since lawmakers overhauled the State Oil and Gas Commission. Would you go back and revisit that again, or do you feel more any hiccups right now? Maybe those changes still need to be implemented further.
I think we need to take another and very serious look at the recent, as you say, overhaul of oil and gas regulation. All right, so the legislature is heavily impacted by lobbying interests, and legislators are trying to do their best to think through issues, and somewhere in the middle of that, either good things or not so good things come. I think we need to take a very serious look at redoing oil and gas regulation. And if the state won't, then the counties must. If we don't do this well, then the attraction of Idaho to others coming will diminish quickly. The attraction of Idaho for the next generation will diminish quickly. We don't want to be another Oklahoma or Texas or North Dakota. We want to be a wonderful Idaho. And so some may ask, am I against all development? No, I'm not. I think there is Am I against all oil and gas development? Well, perhaps I would like to be, but I think there are places in Idaho where it could happen, but not around rivers, not around aquifers, not around people, and not around food-producing farmland. But there are other aspects of economic development that I think could be really positive. And among those that I think and dream and research about is solar development. Idaho could become a leader in the country and perhaps in the world if we would apply the wonderful skills that we have here. And it doesn't just have to be at the high end of things where research and development is restricted to the few. But solar energy development can be rooftop. It can be in the cars we drive. It can be in the old cars that we convert. And so everyone who wants to have a part can. And this is a theme for me in economic development. We should be thinking fairly about people in a wide range of skill sets so that everyone can participate that wants to and enjoy the benefits.
So when you're looking at pursuing that goal, when you're looking at the growth in general, and particularly now from an infrastructure perspective, whether it's building that new solar or schools or roads, we're coming off of a tax reform session. How do you? And I noticed also that some of your comments on education spending, you're looking for better use of dollars, not more dollars. How do you balance growth and some of our recent tax changes? Ensuring that we can pay for what we need, keep educating our students, keep repairing potholes, prepare for whenever the next time we have that horrible winter the other year.
Yep. Well, I was asked a week ago in a debate about would I raise or lower taxes, and it's in Idaho it would be a difficult thing to promote raising taxes, and I don't. I think we have an income that people can live with as a state income, and I think what we need to do is be able to live within our budget as each of us needs to at home. There are different challenges, certainly, but we all need this kind of discipline and personal responsibility and fiscal responsibility together. So how then do we deal with needs in schools and infrastructure and other? Well, I think the challenge in every period is to reassess our priorities. All right, so we have this much money to work with. What are our highest priorities, and how can we meet them? And some things may not be able to be done, and that's a reality of life. But I think if we reassess our priorities, then we can say, here's the pool of funds that we have, and it will be enough. I do think also that when it comes to major infrastructure improvements, it's difficult to pull that out of the general fund. So we need to look at bonds, and we need to look at regional financing, where the financing is tied to, as closely as possible, as a matter of fairness, to the people who are the beneficiaries of the work. In other words, it's difficult to ask someone in Pocatello to pay for major infrastructure improvements in Ada County. People in Pocatello do benefit from things in Ada County, but I think we have to be as close as we can to having the people who benefit carry the greatest financial burden.
So instead of, say, just having statewide Garvey bonds for a set of projects, then you're looking at maybe more of a mix of local financing or somehow targeted taxing districts?
Yeah, I think we have existing bond structures that we need to keep up, but I would like to see us target toward the region as much as we can, because the beneficiaries should be responsible for the bulk of the burden.
All right.
And that has its reflection in rural areas where there may be projects that are more expensive than the rural area can handle. In that case, again, I guess I would come back to this beneficiary issue. If people from the Treasure Valley are benefiting from developments in the rural parts, then we can share back and forth. It's not all or nothing. But I think the focus should be on proportionality and fairness.
Okay. Jumping topics.
Okay.
As a one of three Democrats in the race, your two competitors are, of course, very well funded, pretty well connected, well known. What are you doing to get how it just frankly how do you get to the bar where you need to be in this race, given some of the connections and endorsements and attention that your two competitors have so far?
Well, mine is a grassroots campaign, so I'm reaching out through social media. I'm grateful for opportunities like this, and I talk to people. I go to town hall meetings and I meet with people in different configurations. So mine is more a people-to-people campaign than it is a connections campaign. I will say it even got a little more complicated than you mentioned when the Democratic Party a month ago sent me a letter and said that they would not provide support for my campaign, and they took my information off the Democratic Party website.
Did they? What reason did they give?
Well, they said I wasn't a recognized Democrat in some set of circles, and they objected to Republicans on my campaign staff, and I have some. And then around the side, I learned that the litmus tests I didn't quite satisfy, and it's fine. Everyone can use their resources the way they want, but it's a little unfair to the people of Idaho who would like to see the whole set of candidates if information is withheld from them. So I'm not complaining. I'm just telling you it was one of the challenges, and so what we've done is just increase our outreach and tried to go person to person. I am grateful for the Statesman, and I'm grateful for other media outlets, including me, because I think many people are interested in what a conservative Democrat looks like. For many of us, the parties have left us. They've become more extreme, and a lot of us are in this middle majority who don't think that the Republicans are bad guys or the Democrats are bad guys. We're neighbors to one another. We want to listen and we want to share the good ideas that each side has. Why should we ignore one set of good ideas because we're a member of a party that doesn't want to associate with the other party? That's foolhardiness. If there are good ideas on both sides, let's bring them together. And that's what I'm attempting to do. I'm attempting to bring together personal responsibility and fiscal responsibility, and a keen regard for life, the unborn and the aged and all in between. I'm interested in bringing together a keen concern for poor and disadvantaged people among us. And as I said before, a love and care for the land. We should not be doing things that are detrimental to our generation and to coming generations. And there are ideas on both sides that are really valuable if we will listen to each other.
Back to what you were saying earlier about reconciliation.
Yes. I mean, part of it's reconciliation. Let's listen to each other. And part of it is creative problem solving. If you have a good idea and I have a good idea and we can really listen to each other, we can probably come up with an idea that is even better than either of us had. And I've done this for 30 years in my practice. I've seen it done in different places in government. I'd like to see it happen here. And we can. There is common ground to be found. In the last election cycle, I think many people were discouraged that there just isn't common ground to be found between us. I think that's false. I think we are still thinking people. We don't have to push each other off, and we can not only find common ground but work within it.
So given this philosophy and things like your mix of staff, how did you decide which party to file under?
Well, so the whole story is that I was for a long time a Republican. I was an independent thinking and independent voting Republican, like many people in Idaho. But I also value my Democratic friends as I do my Republican friends. My Republican friends think I'm a Democrat. My Democratic friends think I'm a Republican.
Have you considered just combining the words?
Well, I'm probably something of a hybrid. Thomas Jefferson was a Democratic Republican, and that wasn't a bad idea. My ancestor John Adams and his friend George Washington were nonpartisan, which is probably the best idea for a person in an executive position, because they were interested in bringing factions together. That's what we need to do now. But back to your question, I chose to run as a Democrat in part because the Republican field is pretty crowded, and I suspected that it would get cranky, and it has. And there are good ideas on the Democratic side that need to be represented to a state that is majority Republican. But I'm a hybrid, so I could have come from either side. I chose the Democratic side because I want my Republican friends to know there are good people on the Democratic side. And it seems to me that I can reach to the Republicans effectively if they'll listen.
Are you concerned at all, if you make it to the general, about the Democratic Party banner, just given our recent history of elections in the state, adding an extra challenge to your campaign?
Well, I was, and perhaps in part the Democratic Party solved that for me. Some people worried that, among my Republican friends, some worried that I would be controlled by the party. And that's just not true. I was an independent thinker, and I still am. I welcome my Democratic friends and their thinking. I welcome my Republican friends and their thinking. But I don't intend to be overwhelmed by the Democratic banner. What I'd like to do is say, let's come and work together. So I respect the Democratic people, even if the party is doing its own thing. And I respect the party, just as I respect the Republican Party. But I hope not to be taken down by suspicions or by this or that, because I'm my own person, and I hope that people will vote for the person, not the party, if they're suspicious of the party. I also think that the challenge in the run-up to the general election, if I'm the winner in the primary, and I hope to be, the challenge is going to be a challenge of person to person, ideas to ideas, and I would be proud to put forth what I think are excellent ideas for the people of Idaho to consider. And I don't have the name familiarity, I don't have the money, I don't have the political action committees, but I have good ideas. And I don't claim that because they're all my own, they're not. They're the ideas gathered from people all across the state, and from a lifetime of thinking about public policy and leadership. So, win or lose, I would love to be able to put ideas alongside ideas, and an effort to reconciliation alongside another effort to polarization, an effort to thinking carefully about the future, about our people and our land, against shorter-term interests. And let's let the people decide. If the Democratic banner holds me back, okay. I don't think it will. I think Idahoans are independent people, and they'll be able to look past that. I think Idahoans are people of good judgment, and they'll be able to look at ideas. And I think Idahoans are people who also, like me, are thinking carefully about the future, about their kids, about their grandkids, about the wonders of Idaho that we'd like to preserve, and about economic development that will be healthy, and about environmental policy that means our home is well cared for. It's not wasted by outside interests. So I have confidence in the voters of Idaho, and however they choose, I'm for it.
Well, as you're talking about your ideas, one that caught my eye in our voter guide.
Okay.
You wrote about on a question about healthcare ideas. That you had envisioned some elegant and cost-effective healthcare solutions that you would bring to the table. Do you want to maybe elaborate for a minute on your vision there and what you were referring to?
Okay. Well, somewhat related to this may be the initiative that passed that received the required number of signatures just a few days ago.
Looks like it will. They're still
Okay.
confirming, of course. But.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I come to the issue of healthcare recognizing that healthcare is an important need for all of our people. And we need to sort out helpful ways to be sure that we all have quality healthcare. And I believe in safety nets because safety nets are important. I don't believe in living in safety nets. And so as I think about a variety of governmental issues, we used one of the terms that fits in my description of good government. I think good government is not only open and transparent and efficient, but it is also innovative and where it can be elegant. So among the solutions that I find to be helpful and even elegant is it's encouraging all of us that we can be the primary drivers in our healthcare. We're the decision makers, not someone else. It is simple. It is also elegant because we're not dependent upon others, and we are also not subject to the process, but we're the active players. And beyond that, I'm keen to solve problems as locally as possible, and to look at what within our communities are working well, and encourage those, and where we can add to those. So, in the area of healthcare, particularly for people in the gap, Medicaid expansion or not, I want to encourage the recognition of and support for local medical clinics. It's a lovely institution in Idaho that both in rural areas and in local areas, local community health clinics have been large providers for people in the gap, but also on both sides of it. And I think that through grant funding and through recognition, we can accent and augment the work of local community health clinics. Secondly, I would like to add my voice to encouraging people as a part of taking responsibility for themselves to actively pursue preventative health care and primary care, not wait for the emergency that takes people to the emergency room. I think the reports are good that suggest approximately 80% of our health needs will be taken care of through primary care if we will pay attention to these things and seek it.
Do you feel with some of the requirements for covering preventative care now that have been in place for a few years, do you feel like the framework is there enough that enough people can go seek out preventative care for this to be a...
I think that, I guess the short answer is no, because people aren't doing it as much as they could. And part of that is the cost of the whole process. Mm-hmm. Insurance is very expensive. Even then, deductibles are high. So it's difficult for people to, if they're income constrained, and most of us are at some point, we are, but people who live simply and have a watch on their budget need a more affordable way to find primary care, and one of those. What I think is an elegant and affordable way to find primary care in Idaho was authorized by the legislature a few years ago, and that's a little bit of a funny thing, but to say that it's authorized, but nonetheless, it's called direct primary care, and local physicians who want to return to an older style of family practice, independent and outside of the growing complex around our major hospitals. They're establishing these direct primary care practices, and So people for $50 a month or $150 a month for a family can pay a monthly fee year-round and then see the physician of their choice as often as they want or need. Well, I visited one of those offices recently, and the waiting room was full of people who were jovial and waiting their turn, and they knew they were going to get care. They knew it was going to be good care. They knew each other. They knew their doctor, and it's a contrast to other medical practices that don't have that same environment. So I think we can get quality health care at a more affordable price with the physician of our choice, with the frequency of our needs, if we will work creatively, and the direct primary care is one of those ways. I also think that healthcare goes beyond the doctor. It reaches to you and to me. What kind of food choices are we making? What kind of exercise choices are we making? What kind of stress choices are we making? And the clock is going to become a stressor. But I think if we return this to you and me, to personal responsibility, that's an elegant way to restore health in a simple way.
Before we wrap up, I do want to get to just one or two of our viewer questions,
Sure.
And one of them is directly related to this. Just another angle. What is your plan for getting employee health insurance costs and deductibles down for small business owners? Taking it up to a different layer, the business owners instead of the people directly receiving the care.
Right. Well, if health coverage is affordable, more employers can provide it. And so I've been asked this question talking to people around the state by employers who would really like to provide coverage for their employees and families. So one example, and there are a variety of examples, but one example is an employer can pay the monthly fee for direct primary care. That's one way. And at $150 a month, it's a lot more doable than $1,000 or $1,200 a month for a small business employer. Dealing with the rest of the industry is a challenge, but sometimes we have to create a path parallel to an institution if we're going to do something a little bit different. And that's the way that I think about this. We can work with institutions, and we can also create creative pathways to accomplish the same objective more effectively.
If Medicaid expansion does end up on the ballot and voters do pass it, will you support enacting it?
Yes. I will support enacting it. I will also, I think it's a disservice to the people of Idaho to turn away something that the voters have put in place. As I said before, however, safety nets are important. We don't need to live within them. And where Medicaid expansion is expensive or inefficient, we need to recognize that. And so where it's necessary, I welcome it, but let's do better. Let's solve health issues within Idaho as best we can. And we can do that, again, by encouraging and supporting local community healthcare clinics, and also by encouraging people to be responsible for themselves and to pursue cost-effective health care. I'll make one jump to another question that has come up, and that's about CBD oil. And I think we need to distinguish between recreational marijuana and medicinal cannabis. And I support CBD oil in Idaho. It was passed by the legislature wisely. It was unwisely rejected by the governor. But those things aside, thousands of people in the region and around the country are reporting benefits from it. And where benefits are to be had, it should be available to people. The FDA process will be long and slow for wide use, and yet the anecdotal evidence is sound evidence. We could line people up for miles who would be able to say, this has been a help to us, and we need to be able to respect that, provide help where we can.
One other viewer question, back to a different topic, is you're talking about blend of jobs and economic growth. Someone asked, what are you planning to do to bring more tech jobs to Idaho?
Well, I would start by encouraging our young people and our between jobs people and those who have a vision and calling for tech jobs within Idaho to pursue those jobs first, and then bringing them from elsewhere can follow. But I think that that encouraging tech schools, encouraging trade schools, and encouraging, in particular, entrepreneurial thinking are three steps towards bringing quality tech jobs to the state or creating them here for our own people who want to pursue them. And I mentioned entrepreneurial training or teaching. This is a critical piece to me because some tech jobs are going to be in our major businesses, our major employers. Some are going to be in the orbit around major employers that are related to them, and some are going to be startups that will be in rural areas or in urban areas, but nonetheless they're wholly new startups, and they may be innovators for the future. But I think about entrepreneurial training, and I'd love to see it, as well as sustainability education, actively be a part of high school and college curricula, as it is increasingly in different institutions. But it's important for a number of reasons. One, a few years ago, Oxford University in England did a wide study of jobs that we know now which will be going away in the next 5 to 10 years. And the number is staggering. With automation, with technology, more and more of the jobs that we know now are going away. And we don't need to be afraid of that. But we can keep our eyes open to where non-automated jobs are available that we would be drawn to. And we can also develop entrepreneurial thinking so that we're not stuck when the job goes away. We have the ability to create our own. And so I think for our young people, and for generations beyond, and for people outside the state that would like to come here and be a part, those are three ways to help in the creation of tech jobs.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I think we will need to wrap it up here, but very much appreciate you joining us. And thank you all for watching. Today around 4 o'clock, we'll have Republican candidate Dalton Kennedy. And at 10 a.m. next Tuesday, we'll speak with Democrat Paulette Jordan.